Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to day 19 of my 31 horror movies in October Halloween series. So today we're going to take a look at a pretty classic werewolf movie from about 40 years ago, actually, exactly, and that is An American Werewolf in London from 1981. I have the restored edition on Blu-ray here. Really nice copy. So yeah, An American Werewolf in London. I actually hadn't seen this movie before, so I've owned it for a while. This is the first time I actually got to watch it. So let's just go ahead and get into the setup, premise, and cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will not contain spoilers. Sorry. So American Werewolf in London is a 1981 horror comedy written and directed by John Landis, an international co-production of the United Kingdom and the United States. The film's plot follows two American backpackers, David and Jack, who are attacked by a werewolf while traveling in England, causing David to question whether he will become a werewolf until the next full moon. So the movie starts out two American backpackers from New York City, David Kessler and Jack Goodman, are trekking across the moors in Yorkshire. As night falls, they stop at a local pub called the Slaughtered Lamb. Jack notices a five-pointed star on the wall, but when he asks about it, the pub goers become hostile. The pair decides to leave, and the pub goers warn them to keep to the road, stay clear of the moors, and beware of the full moon. David and Jack end up wandering off the road into the moors and are attacked by an unseen vicious creature. Jack is mauled to death, and David is injured. The beast is shot and killed by some of the pub goers who came out searching for the boys. Instead of a dead animal, David sees the corpse of a naked man lying next to him before passing out. And then David wakes up 3 weeks later in a hospital in London. He is interviewed by Police Inspector Villers, Villers, Villiers, yeah, who tells him that he and Jack were attacked by an escaped lunatic, but David insists they were attacked by some sort of rabid dog or wolf. An undead Jack appears to David and explains the beast that attacked him was a werewolf and reveals that David is now one. Jack urges David to kill himself before the next full moon, not only because Jack is cursed to linger undead for as long as the bloodline of the werewolf that attacked him survives, but also to prevent David from inflicting the same fate on anyone else. So yeah, that's sort of our setup and premise for An American Werewolf in London. Very interesting. Cast wise, we have David Naughton as David Kessler, Jenny Agutter as Nurse Alex Price, Griffin Dunne as Jack Goodman, John Woodvine as Dr. J.S. Hirsch, Don McKillop as Inspector Villers, and Frank Oz as Mr. Collins. So yeah, that's the gist of An American Werewolf in London by John Landis from 1981. This is a really enjoyable watch. I really had a good time watching this movie. I don't mind. I like werewolf movies. It's not one of my favorite subgenres, but it's certainly not one of my least favorite either. It's kind of in the middle for me. Um, but I like them when they're done well, and I thought this one was done really well. So let's just kind of get into my thoughts about it here, starting with the pros. And when you start with this movie, you have to start with the technical aspects of the movie. So starting with the practical effects, which are phenomenal. They're right on the same level as John Carpenter's The Thing for my money. So effective and creepy. Doesn't seem like effects, but it seems like real life, which is about the biggest compliment you can give special effects in a movie. Also, you got to talk about the makeup effects, which are amazing, especially in those scenes when Jack comes back from the dead, sort of, or in limbo, I guess, to visit David. Particularly the first one where he's got like the scars across his face where he was clawed, and you can see like the blood and the guts hanging out. Just incredible stuff. Really incredible makeup effects, but not just then, but also in some of the dream sequences that David has, and when he turns into a werewolf, part of those makeup effects, just phenomenal. Um, they're so convincing and well done. They really add to the effectiveness and believability to this movie. And then, of course, like everybody's going to talk about, I have to talk about the transformation sequence. That scene is legendary for good reason. Very frightening and brilliant at the same time. So convincing, detailed. Um, yeah, it was really, it's one of those things that I've heard that it's, people talk about the transformation sequence every time I've heard about this movie. But you don't really know till you watch it yourself. But yeah, they didn't really miss a beat with it. It was like you would imagine somebody turning into a werewolf, quite frankly, and especially for that time. Nowadays they'd probably do it with some CGI in there, but of course back in 1980, 81, they didn't have that, so it was all practical, and it just looks fantastic. Also got to talk about. I thought there was good chemistry between David and Jack. When they're both alive at the beginning of the movie, then every time Jack comes back and visits David, and just the dialogue between the two of them, just sort of the chemistry that they have together, really stood out to me in the movie. Also, I think David and Alex have pretty good chemistry. The nurse Alex Price, David moves in with her for a while, and they kind of start a relationship, which happens pretty quickly, like literally the same day that she agrees to let him stay with. Um, but yeah, there's good chemistry there. Most of the humor in this movie, and it is a horror comedy. I mean, it's an interesting horror comedy because it's not too far one way or the other. It's To me, it's got like the perfect balance and blend. But the humor that was in this movie really worked for me because it wasn't forced. My favorite and funniest scene is probably towards the end when all those people that um, let's just say that David, when he becomes a werewolf, there's some people that have made an unfortunate demise as a result, and they all come back along with Jack, and they're sitting there in a porno movie theater, actually, and they're all discussing the best ways for David to kill himself, basically, to avoid his fate again. It's pretty funny stuff. While they're all discussing it there in that theater. So then, of course, you got to talk about how well of a directed movie it was by John Landis. Definitely his best directed movie. I know he's done some other movies and other things that are good, but to me, this is definitely his best one. He had a great vision with this movie, and I thought he executed it very well, from the horror to the humor to the casting to the effects to just everything. He really made this movie work across the board. And getting into the horror side, there are some genuinely creepy and even scary moments and scenes. Like the nightmare sequences come to mind that David has, particularly the one with like the Nazi zombies or whatever they are that's shooting up. I'm assuming it's his family in his house. He's having a dream sequence about that's really creepy and scary. And then the one where he's got the he's got the makeup and the like the I don't know what he's supposed to be, but like the blue face with the fangs and everything. I'm assuming it's a vision of turning into a werewolf there. That was really effective, really scary. But yeah, overall, it is a very effective horror comedy for me. Has a very light, humorous tone, obviously, overall, even though it does have horror in it. But also the scary scenes and disturbing ideas, and it's also got effective gore. I mean, it's not the bloodiest or goriest movie that I've seen, but it's certainly got a good amount for this type of movie to make it believable that when a werewolf attacks somebody, there's going to be not only blood but some guts hanging out there. So I thought they did a good job with that, where it's not too over the top, and the comedy, the jokes aren't forced. That's the biggest thing that some horror movies have is forced comedy, but this one is just like I said, it's just a perfect balance here. And then of course I love the soundtrack to this movie. There's no way I can get through the pros without talking about the soundtrack, the score to the movie, very fitting and very fun. You have great songs from Creedence Clearwater Revival, like Bad Moon Rising and Blue Moon, which are obviously perfect for this movie for obvious reasons. Perfect choices. Also, the sound design is good with when they hear the werewolf off in the distance towards at the beginning of the movie and later in the movie as well. Very convincing and creepy. So, yeah, very very effective sound all across the board, from the music to the sound within the movie to the songs they have. Everything just top notch. So yeah, those are my pros for An American Werewolf in London. Couple of cons that I have, nothing too big, but I will say the ending of the movie kind of felt like a, I don't know if a cop out's the right word, but it kind of left me feeling empty, like I wanted a bit more. It ends very abruptly without any sort of closure, which felt kind of weak to me. I mean, I know sometimes the movies, when your main character, something happens to him, and sometimes movies ending abruptly like that are kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, no more explanation needed. In some movies, they give you some and you don't want it. In this movie, I kind of wanted a little bit more. I'm not going to give it away, but there's a scene at the end in London where something happens and there's some emotion involved, and then it just cuts to the ending credit. It's kind of like, okay, that was messed up. So that's one thing that stuck out to me in a negative way. Also, I don't think there's a lot of character development that we're given for the main for most of the main characters. We're given a little bit, but there's no arcs or real characterization to any of the main characters, whether it be David or Jack. We just know they're backpackers from New York, or even Nurse Alex. You know, we know that she's a working girl, as she says, and the doctor and the inspector. There's just really nothing there to grab onto with any of these characters, but really the effects and the directing makes it all work as far as where we care about the characters. But the characters themselves, there could have been a little bit more there, I thought. Also, the look of the werewolf isn't great, even for, and I realize it's 40 years ago, and they don't have the options or the resources they do today. But I just don't think it holds up as well. I think it could have still been better, even for that time. Um, I felt like it was kind of bland and lazy. Plus, they kind of cut away from it a lot, so you don't get a good look of it all for very long, which was probably on purpose. Um, there's a couple of side characters as well that don't really serve much of a purpose ultimately in the movie, despite starting out as if they're going to play a big part. I mean, Dr. Hirsch is a big one, and so is Inspector Villers. Those two kind of stand out most notably for that, where it seems like they're a big part of the story, and then they just kind of, whatever happens to them just kind of goes away at the end, and we're focused on David, Jack when he comes back, and then Nurse Alex as well. But those are just a few little cons that I have. But overall, guys, this is a fantastic werewolf movie. People were right about the transformation scene, the effects, all the technical aspects of this movie are top notch, and the story's good enough. The characters are well acted enough and good enough because of the directing to really make this movie work. And like I said, the blend and the balance of horror and comedy is very effective throughout this movie. So I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10 as far as the rating goes. 8.5 out of 10. Go ahead and let me know what you guys think of An American Werewolf in London. Like this video, comment down below with your thoughts, pros and cons, if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, I definitely would recommend seeing it. In fact, I would recommend owning it. I'm fortunate to have this restored edition. It's also got a lot of special features on the back, bonus features. You're probably not going to be able to see them too well with my lighting, but documentaries and outtake storyboards, not just the standard trailer or anything. So this is a really good copy to get. Um, I'm trying to see if I can see where it came from. Newly restored for improved HD picture. Stay off the road, keep clear of the moors. That's the tagline of the movie. But yeah, I'm not sure who released this, but definitely check it out. Definitely buy it if you can. 8.5 out of 10. Like, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my overall horror content. The rest of my 31 series for October, as well as taking a look at a TV anthology classic series coming up in November. So yeah, that's An American Werewolf in London from 1981, directed by John Landis. Thank you for watching this video. Stay scared. Bye.